today to improve the quality of your video. The agenda is to look at our settings for the iPhone 11, 12, 13 and 14. What I have here with me today is an iPhone 11 Pro Max, but the main things to talk about and set for your phone run through all the models. So we'll take a look at some of the differences. All the settings for the camera in the settings they follow a certain arrangement that runs through most of them, so I'm very sure a 10 could benefit from that as well. Irrespective of the device you have, camera, iPhone, Android, whatever camera you have, there are 5 main things that you need to consider, and these things you would realize are put in the settings in blocks or categories, which makes everything make sense. So I would highly recommend watching it to have a basic but holistic understanding of the things in the settings. My name is Adobia. If you're new and you've never seen me on the internet before, welcome to my channel. This is going to be very simple information, but it's going to pack a punch. So the first thing you want to do is to hit the subscribe button somewhere here. Then let's go to settings. All right, I don't have time to scroll down looking for the camera, so I'm just going to type camera and then it shows up. Now the very first thing, let's get that out of the way, is formats. Choose high efficiency. For those using 14, I realize you have something called ProRes. ProRes would give you pro quality. It looks really good, but it takes up so much space, so much space, but it is very beautiful and very high quality. So if you have the space, you could turn it on and play with it and see what comes of it. If you remember the 5 things I spoke about, you can already see some things that look familiar to you. So when you look at record video, record slow motion, you see some numbers or figures that come there: 1080p, 30 frames per second, etc. Those are your resolution and frame rate together, and that's why in that video I explained them together. Then note preserve settings, just have a mental note of that. Now there's a whole block for composition as well, and so you realize that already 3 out of the 5 things we are talking about are fixed here inside the settings, and some of them you can manipulate inside the camera app as well. So taking the simplest one, I would say let's look at composition. Always keep your grid on. The mirror front camera is just basically to correct that phenomenon, I would say, of using the selfie camera and then your right looking like your left and your left looking like your right once you open it or you take the photo or the video. Because you want to correct that, you just turn this on and it corrects it. So it has to do with composition as well. View outside frame helps you see outside the frame when you're filming or shooting, and you can now decide that, okay, I want this in my frame or outside my frame. But once you're done filming or taking a photo, those things outside the frame will not appear in the photo, so just bear that in mind. So gotten that out of the way, now let's go back to the top and hit record video. You see the resolution and the frame rate together. It has been arranged from the lowest quality to the highest quality, but as I said, highest quality does not always mean the best quality. Do you see down here there is show PAL format? It has to do with television and electricity and flickering of lights, but there's a different reason why I want you to tap on this. When you tap on it, you notice that the resolutions and frame rates list expands. Now you have 25 frames per second as well inside there. The reason why I asked you to open this is now you have a 25 frames per second option for 1080p HD, because there is no 24 frames per second option for that. So in case that's what you want to use, this gives you as close as possible to that frame rate in 1080p. So this is just, giving you more options. Now when you are choosing your resolution and frame rate, it's not a matter of which one do I just choose for better quality. It depends on a number of factors. What's the point or the purpose of the video you're filming? What is the creative thought process behind it? What environment are you in? Another instance where you would have to consider choosing a certain resolution and frame rate could be because you have space issues. 1080p would look amazing on Instagram. So if I was an Instagram creator, a very consistent creator that was hard on space, I would need all the space I can get. So I would choose 1080p at 30, 25 or 60 frames per second, depending on what I want. For YouTube, I would recommend using the 4K settings. I personally would leave mine at 1080p HD at 30 frames per second because you can easily change these in the camera. At the top right of the screen, you'd see the figures with a dot in the middle. On the left side of the dot, you'd see your resolution, be it 4K or HD. HD is 1080p. And when you open slow motion, you can do that as well, change between 120 to 240. So basically, that is how to change your resolution inside the camera. There's enhanced stabilization. Please turn it on, please. Auto low light frames per second, I keep that on, and also lock your camera so that you don't automatically switch between cameras and lenses while you are filming. Let's go back to record slow-mo. 120 frames per second or 240, but I keep it at 120 frames per second. If you want slow motion, choose 240 frames per second. The difference between the 13 and the 14 is that cinematic settings has a feature inside settings. 4K 30 frames per second is the highest quality. I would recommend you take this if you are doing vlogs and you are moving about a lot, but if you are doing a sit down video like this one, 4K 24 frames per second in cinematic is absolutely fine. 1080p HD at 30 frames per second, perfect for TikToks and Reels, would look absolutely stunning. You can always change the resolution inside the camera anyway. Now let's go back to preserve settings, and this is where the tea about exposure is. Now before we enter preserve settings, I need to explain something to you to make it make sense. When it comes to setting your exposure correctly, there are 3 things you need to balance in order to have a properly exposed image. These 3 things are in a love triangle called the exposure triangle. When you set your